I've been thinking about everything going on in society and what people are struggling with, and something came to mind. Do you remember back in the 90s, every single father on TV, with just a few exceptions, was incompetent, drunk, abusive, manipulative,
I just hate being around the kids. What?
absent, stupid. And I ask myself why that is. Why were fathers presented this way?
Just because I have a stinking job that I hate? A family that doesn't respect me? A whole city that curses the day I was born?
And I've noticed a theme. So many men my age, millennials, Gen X, etc., feel as though they can't reach out to their dads for advice, for counsel, for support, for love, that the fathers aren't really very good fathers. And I wonder why that is. And I think I have some ideas, but I think so many of the things that we're seeing in society, depression, the feeling of loneliness, so many men particularly feel lonely, but not just men. So many of these emotional issues that people are dealing with, I really suspect some of that goes back to the absence of fathers. Not just the absence of fathers, but the mocking of the idea of a father. To the point now where some young men can't find a wife with whom they can become a father. And I know guys who work like 60, 70 hours a week, manual labor, and they get just to support their daughters, and they get very little support or praise for it. But it just seems like there's this narrative in life right now where fatherhood is just kind of cast to the wayside, but it turns out that we need dads. There was a psychologist named Carl Jung, and I don't agree with him on everything, but Jung had the idea of the eternal child, a popular version of the Peter Pan syndrome. It's this guy who grows up and he extends his adolescence well into adulthood, perhaps his whole life. And he never faces his problems head on. He's always waiting for his ship to come in to save him from growth, from struggle. But the thing is, these eternal children, these Peter Pans, go on to have relationships. They get married, they have girlfriends, they date, they have children. And then their children are raised by children. So don't get me wrong, I love to have fun. I mean, I'm wearing a Back to the Future shirt right now. But the idea of refusing to grow up, to face and take responsibility and face that struggle, that's a real phenomenon. And I think a lot of it goes back to the fact that people didn't have dads, not good ones, who were absent or drunk or abusive or manipulative or emotionally scarred, who never beat their own demons. And then I think, how many of their dads, how many of our dads didn't have fathers, and how long has this been going on? There's this guy named Elijah Yassi on Spotify. He dropped one song and then vanished off the face of the earth. It's called Searching for Meaning, and it's about his journey to God.
Maybe someday I'll be okay. Right now I'm hurting, lost and deserted.
At first in his life, he didn't think there was a God, and he doesn't need God. He's in his room pouring liquor.
I have friends, yet I'm lonely. My parents split, so I never had a father figure. They say we see God resembled in our father. Well, I guess it's why I don't believe in that father figure. What's the point of God, huh? He seems to only make our problems bigger. I got a better solution. Let me ponder while I pour this liquor.
And if I'm being totally honest, I think that's so many of us now. Now, my failures are my fault, but I can sympathize with people who, our earliest memories of our father, they really do sort of fill that space, if you will, of how we come to envision God. This reality greater than we can understand, for which we use the word God. And then I think, how many of us feel that God is manipulative or vindictive or selfish or absent? And I wonder, for how many of us did this come back to something to do with fatherhood? How many young women now, and I'm not pointing fingers, but how many young women now don't really know what kind of man to look for? They don't really know the difference between a child and a man, a boy and a man, or a good man and a bad man, and how much of that comes back to fathers. To take it one step further, it does seem to me that to some small degree, at least to some small degree, there is some sort of public portrayal of fatherhood in the negative. Some have said people who grow up without dads or with bad dads tend more towards promiscuity, towards poverty, towards immoral lifestyles, lack of self-esteem. I'm not getting into the psychology of it, but it does seem to me that there's something there. But I have a simple thought, really simple. How many of our dads didn't have good dads themselves? And they were refusing to grow up from the things that they faced. What happens if we have kids? Like, I'm blessed with kids. My point would be, if our dads passed along these problems and society's kind of spiraling from this, how do you break that? God's honest truth is, I think it takes someone breaking that free fall. I have to do the work of becoming a good father to my children. And what does that involve for me? Well, practically speaking, what I know, I don't know everything, but what I do know is that often involves self-denial. How many times bad dads, did they put their own pain above their kids' well-being? Did they put their own demons? Did they put their own pursuit of pleasure or wealth or women or whatever else above their kids' needs? And I'm not saying men shouldn't take care of themselves. I'm not saying men shouldn't have leisure and have some time with the boys, of course. But how many times did our fathers who left people with baggage put themselves consistently above their kids? And what I'm saying is, for me as a father, regardless of what we went through, I'm saying that what I know is that we have to do the hard work of putting our kids, their needs, their well-being, above ourselves, our own needs. It's self-denial. If the eternal child is a man who refuses to grow up and face hard things, to grow through struggle, to take responsibility, I think it's almost harder to do that now, to grow up, than it was in the past. What if you refuse to be that eternal child? What if we chose deliberately, willfully every day to take responsibility, accountability, to deny ourselves and put others first, to be the father that our kids deserve, the father figure to some younger man, if they need it. Just the guy who can listen to his niece and see what she needs, what she's all about. Listen to the neighbor, the coworker, the younger coworker, and just be that guy, because we need people like that. I think of Mr. Rogers, who made a huge impact on me as a kid. For all the men that were, maybe way too into alcohol and all this stuff, I just remember watching Mr. Rogers and feeling like this is a guy who can listen and a guy who actually cares about human beings. And I could sense that from when I was still in diapers. We need people like that.
But the toughest thing is to love somebody who has done something mean to you, especially when that somebody has been yourself.
What if we strive to become men like that? The thing is, I think by God's grace, no matter what you've been through, and some of you have been through a lot, but I think that we can do that. If everyone had a good dad trying to introduce their kids to something greater and not just the trash out there in pop culture. If they had dads who loved them and spent time with them and just invested in them and showed them how to succeed in life and do simple things like change the tire and change the brakes and save money, invest, how much better would we all be? How much better would society be? How much better would a more healthy view of authority would we have? The one thing I'm grateful for is it seems like millennials, for all the good and bad things about us, it seems like a lot of men, I think it's harder to be a good father now in some ways than it was in the past, because you can't depend upon the system, the community, to do things for you. Women often work now too. It's not just the dads out working. And so you have to split those responsibilities of getting kids to and fro. You can't just depend on the school system to pass along values to your kids. They may not. Dads now have more burden, I think. And what I see though is a lot of dads, young dads, spending so much more time with their kids than they had. And that's just a fantastic thing. So here's what I think. I'm a Christian. I think that the way we see so much about the world is probably influenced by the father we had or didn't have. And I think we can influence the world to a great degree, better than being famous or rich or whatever else, by being those fathers for our kids, being the grown-up for our kids that we needed as kids. So here's my thought. No matter, my view is, my considered view is that if every one of us moved one step closer to God, like, we would be better for it and society would be better for it. I don't mean like pray a sinner's prayer and join the religious rite, or I'm talking about in the deepest place of our hearts and lives, sought God, and then through God's grace, that renewal that comes in life to overcome whatever baggage we have. And I just think of this one story in the Bible in Luke 15 of the parable of the prodigal son. And Jesus said, there was a man who had 2 sons, and the younger of them said to his father, "Father, give me the share of property that falls to me." In other words, he wanted his inheritance early. So the father gives it to him. And of course, what does this guy do? The son goes out and he spends it all, and he lives wild, and he's not responsible. He wastes his life and really shames the name of his father. And so often the idea we have of God is that God would, because I do think we should have some healthy fear of God, but so often we think, God is this bully. Well, here's how the father in the story reacts. When this son spends everything he has and he comes back, and he says, "I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. Please just make me a servant." The father comes to him, sees him afar off, runs to him and throws his arms around him and calls him son. And he gives him this beautiful feast, this homecoming welcome. And the father gives to that son who's lived all these years wasting his life the best. That's how I think God really is. Like, we have a father. And I think in that example, find an example of the kind of fathers that we can be. So just a reminder, turn off the TV sometimes, like, read old books, go outside, do real things. And a reminder that your life genuinely matters, no matter how you feel, no matter how dark it gets. So live your life well. Stick around, all right? As always, I really thank you for watching. God bless.